My name's Marie Fazio. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the College of Computing and Informatics and our college's DEI Council. In observance of International Women's History Day, which was Tuesday this week, and Women's History Month, we're really proud to welcome Mary Odabashian. She's a proud LeBeau alum. She serves on our college's Dean's Executive Advisory Committee, and she's a Global Marketing VP at SAP. So with that, Mary.
Thank you, Marie. It's just, what can I say? I appreciate the opportunity to be speaking here today, and it truly is an honor. I'm gonna just jump right in, right? So gender bias. I really like the Cambridge Dictionary version, partly because it's so short, right? It describes it as the unfair difference in the way women and men are treated. And what I like about that definition is, gender parity, it's not a woman's issue, it's a human issue. And I like the way that it describes that it's the unfair differences in the way that women and men are treated. And one of the examples that I like to use from the workplace world is, we're so used to women having the luxury of maternity leave, but for the longest of times, paternity leave was not available to men. And it either wasn't available, or if it was available, men felt shunned or mocked or whatever. And little by little, if you look at the progression over the last, I would say even 5 years, the acceptance of paternity leave in the workforce is growing and growing and growing. And that's not just a good thing for men, it's a good thing for families, right? So it benefits everybody. So this concept of gender bias, feel like nobody has gone unscathed from bias, whether you're a man or a woman or however you self-identify. Bias is out there. And to get us going in the community a little bit and get the juices running amongst everybody, I'm going to invite you to, in the chat, either give me a thumbs up or say the word yes if you have experienced bias in your own life. And while you're thinking about whether you have the courage to do so, I'm going to be brave and share some of the biases that I've experienced. Early in my career, it was the traditional, oh, she's the girl in the room, and I was commanded to be the note taker. That did not last long. I pushed back on that quickly, but it was a thing. And more uncomfortably, there's the being touched inappropriately by men in power positions. That has happened to me, not just from a career perspective, but in other parts of my life as well. And it's not fun, but it's a reality that it's thought that it's okay to touch women in certain ways. I was denied promotions and denied raises with no reason. And my being the only female on the team, that always felt a little suspect to me. I could never prove that it was a bias, but it felt not right. And then one that's kind of personal for me was my hair, as strange as that might sound. I have long hair, and I found early in my career that when I would wear my hair down, I was perceived as not as smart as I am, not as capable as I am. And at one point in my career, and I would say it wasn't so early in my career, I was actually told that I lacked executive presence, but I was not told why I lacked or how I lacked executive presence or what I could do to change that. What actions could I take to get executive presence? And what I can tell you that I learned is that this is what executive presence looks like, and this is what executive presence looks like. And I would say about 2 years ago, I put my trademark ponytail in the bathroom and now wear my hair down as much as I like, because I'm done with it. I'm done with having to prove past that. in International Women's Day this year, the theme for this year was Imagine a Gender Equal World, and with the hashtag Break the Bias, with the challenge that we can collectively break the bias. So in my talk today, I'm going to discuss the arc of change that I have witnessed in my life, and the impact that I've tried to make within that arc of change, within my sphere of influence. And then through my life's journey, in the second part of the presentation, I want to talk about some simple things that everybody can do, depending on where you are in your student journey or your adult, well, everybody's an adult, but in your more mature career journey, in order to break the bias, And it doesn't have to be like gigantic things. It can be, you know, just small, simple things. But when everybody does small, simple little things, all of a sudden we create atomic change. So it can have a roll-on ripple effect. Perspective is really personal, right? And my own personal perspective starts out as being a girl growing up in a working class family. We are an Armenian American immigrant family, and I grew up in the southeastern Pennsylvania area. And before I tell my story, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there are citizens in countries like Ukraine, like Ethiopia, like Yemen, where everybody, not just women, are experiencing the atrocities of war. There's countries like Zimbabwe and Nigeria where they're experiencing just terrible food insecurity. And there's many, many, many countries where people are just in millions and millions and millions of people are desperately in need of humanitarian aid. And in those environments, it's oftentimes the women who bear the worst of it, right? They bear gender-based violence, exploitation, trafficking, discrimination, that lacking access to vital health care, not only for themselves, but also for their children. So as I tell my story within the context of my business workplace, just don't forget that there's a bigger story out there, and we can all take small actions to make big change in the world. So perspective is personal, and this is my story. And my story started in 1970 when I was 4 years old. This is me on the left and my mom on the right. And it's kind of crazy. In 1970, my mom, in some states in the United States, would not have been able to sign her own credit card agreement. She would not have been able to use her maiden name. She could not incorporate a business. She could not serve on a jury, and she was not allowed to legally own a residence on her own. And you can't see, but I'm living in a residence that I own on my own. I think that's nuts, right? I can't believe she grew up in that environment. And it wasn't until 1972 that Title IX was passed. And in 1970, well, what's Title IX? Title IX was a bill that was passed that protects girls like me from being discriminated against sex in federally funded programs. And one of those federally funded programs was sports. And because Title IX existed, that afforded me the ability, like you see in that crazy photo, to play that field hockey. But I also played lacrosse, I played basketball, I played it all very badly, but I got to play. And I don't know that that would have been possible had Title IX not been passed. In 1973, my mom could actually officially serve on a jury. And in 1974, she was finally allowed to sign her own credit card agreement. And I actually remember sitting on the dining room table with her when she decide when she wrote out her first application. And I remember cheering her on, just being like really excited, like mommy's going to have financial freedom. I don't even know how I understood that at the time, but somehow that rang really true. Then, move the clock forward a little bit. If you look at our current judicial environment, the path for the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett in 2020, and now the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson, that was all paved by Sandra Day O'Connor. And that happened in 1981 when I was in high school and I had really big wings in my hair. Yeah, and the path for Kamala Harris to become vice president was paved that way was paved by Geraldine Ferrara in 1984 when I was just a freshman at Drexel, and that's actually me in what used to be the quad at Drexel. My hair got bigger, and at that time, I'm pretty sure the female population at Drexel was about 25%. And when you look at that perspective, it's tempting to ask, like, hey, Mary, are you angry that it's taken so long to see this change, right? You sat in junior high and high school looking at Sandra Day O'Connor becoming a Supreme Court justice, and geez, it takes until 2020 for it to be felt like it's normal. Or same with the vice president. Geez, you were just entering college, and we don't want to say how long ago that was. And now finally we have a vice president who is female. And does that make me angry, or does it make me super excited that in just the first half of my life I've seen this amazing change? And for me, the reality is it's both, a little bipolar on that. But I really try hard to be positive about it. And I try to look at change through the lens of the long game. I think there's a long arc for change. And if you take the long game and you celebrate every win that happens, little by little, you chip away at it. And when you look back, you can see that you actually have made progress. There's a lot going on in the world these days, right? It's crazy out there. We've got a pandemic, we've got wars, we've got all sorts of inequities. And I can imagine that folks out there might be frustrated, they might be filled with a lot of passion on a topic, and asking yourselves, what can I do? How can I help? How can I enact my own change? How can I be a catalyst for change? We are Drexel, and some of you are from SAP. And for both audiences, look, ambition can't wait. It's the tagline of the university. And I think it's a tagline in terms of a way of being and a way of acting. And that I believe that tagline rings true, but ambition isn't enough. It has to be coupled with hard work, with tenacity, with patience to play out that long game. And early on in my career, somebody explained to me why that is. So I want to share with you this little exercise. So we got a group exercise we're going to do now. I'm going to invite you to bring your hands together. Just fold them together. You don't think about it, just it's comfy, it's cozy, it makes you feel good. You can even let rest on them a little if you want. You didn't think at all about how you brought your hands together. And now I want to invite you to take your fingers and just move them over one set of fingers. It feels weird. It doesn't feel right. It feels strange. I've been doing this exercise for at least 25 years. And for the most part now, 25 years later, it feels normal. But every once in a while, I'm like, oh, it still feels funny. Imagine like you're one person and how hard it is to make that shift from by 1 centimeter, to move your fingers 1 centimeter forward, just that simple, tiny little act feels strange. And that's just you. Imagine what it takes to shift the mindset of a business, or to compel a society to change a previously percepted norm. It takes a lot, and it does not happen overnight. And I think that's like a nice example. If it's this hard to make the shift in our own selves, making bigger shifts, it can feel like moving a mountain. So speaking of moving mountains, my career journey. So my career journey, yes, it was in the days when you advertised your jobs in the newspaper. I actually got my job through the Drexel Career Center, but the job was also posted in the new, similar jobs were posted in the newspaper. When I joined the workforce, it was in 1989, and I was super lucky. I had amazing mentors, and I had amazing female mentors, and I had just terrific male leadership and male sponsorship. And I really felt like I belonged in my field, in my company, and in my profession. Until one day I didn't. It was about almost 20 years into my career, in that 2007 timeframe. The percentage of women in tech was in a female free fall. And I was getting really frustrated. I was tired of being the only woman at the table, the only woman in the room, the only woman on the phone. And it started to feel really lonely. But it turned out I wasn't the only one that felt lonely. And in 2007, I ended up in a random conversation with 3 of my colleagues, and I'll give them a quick shout out. So that's Donna Iannucci on the left, LeBeau grad, MBA 97 grad. Lisa Spangler next to her, both of them are still at SAP, and Dorothy Anderman is now over at Google. They all said I could say their name out loud, so we're good. And the 4 of us ended up in a conversation where we recognized that all of us felt something wasn't right. We felt like we didn't belong. We felt like there wasn't enough progress. And we felt like we had it within ourselves to make change and be a catalyst for making change. So in 2007, within weeks, because ambition can't wait, literally within weeks, we held what came to be known as the first meeting of the Business Women's Network in the United States. There was already a chapter in Germany that had started maybe 2 or 3 months earlier. And we started that about 15 years ago. And, we spent a lot of time talking about how we were so nervous about being called the Bitchy Women's Network. And I hate saying it like that because it's not nice, but that was real. And that was a real conversation that we had. It was very important for us to be known as the Business Women's Network. For us, it was about forming this network in order to create better business. And when we established that, some of our goals were to connect people, to help them grow, and empower them to lead. And once we had it established, it wasn't enough to just connect people. We then took it to the next level because, again, we believed in this, like, being tenacious and working hard to have a win, celebrate the win, do the next thing. Have a win, celebrate the win, do the next thing. So the second thing that we did, and then it wasn't just the 4 of us, we put a leadership team around it. We started a mentoring program, which, if you fast forward, is now institutionalized within the company. And we, after 3 years of doing that, we connected with the business. So we were a grassroots team. but we connected with the business and helped the business to establish what became known as the Diversity Advisory Council for North America. And we were an important piece of that council. And that council, so again, like being tenacious, moving the next thing, that council then built the business case for why diversity means better business. And we looked at things like better employee engagement, better customer satisfaction, better innovation, better revenue, better profitability. And then from there, it kind of took off. You know, there's only so much that the Business Women's Network could do, but that kind of created a groundswell, so much so that in 2013, the company globally set the target to have 25% of the female workforce, 20% of the leadership positions at SAP filled by women. And they wanted to do that by 2017, and that was a pretty aggressive goal, and they hit it. So in 2017, they set the next 5-year goal, which was to have 30% women in leadership by 2022. And I am authorized to say that in North America, we hit it already. I think we actually hit it before the year started. And globally, we are smidge away, but very confident that we will hit that goal wholly and completely by the end of this year, which for me is just like super exciting to see. And today there are 90 business women's networks across the globe. And I think there are 15,000 members. And that set the groundwork for, or the foundation for, so many other employee network groups to show up and be okay at SAP. You know, I think SAP is really focused on creating an environment where everybody can show up as they are. And these types of employee network groups help to make that be possible. And when I look at my role, my personal role in that arc of change at SAP and the catalyst role that I played in that, I'm super proud of where we are today. But when I put it in perspective of where we came from and where I think we need to go, I hope I one day see a day where I don't have to put this slide up, where we don't need employee network groups, because living and acting in a diverse environment is just who we are and is what unites us, and that we all are as one united employee group, right? Without these differentiations. That would be like my nirvana. So more to do, more to look forward to. I want to take a breather because I did a lot of talking, and I'm just curious, you know, if anyone has any questions or if anyone has any comments. I've said a lot. I know there's some people on this call who have taken the journey with me, so would love to either hear through the chat or I think they can raise their hand, Murray. If that's,
yeah, they can. Someone reached out to me directly, Mary. Here's their question. How do you overcome day-to-day setbacks when you were the only woman at the table? What kept you going?
Well, first of all the fabulous women I was surrounded by, even if we weren't in the majority, right? And I say that seriously, right? So it means that I have the place to go to scream, and I have screamed, right? That I have a place to go to vent it, to talk it out, to speak it through. And sometimes it wasn't necessarily going to another woman. Sometimes it was going to a trusted male advisor. I've been blessed to have, you know, mentors that cross the gender lines, you know. And you have to have the courage to speak, right? So if I think about the example where I said that I was turned down for promotions, I had a two-year episode across two different bosses where I pounded and pounded relentlessly. I mean, I was not giving up. I refused to give up because I knew my worth. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until my case was heard and until I was promoted. And it's not, I knew I had the right business case. I just needed it to land on the right ears, and I was not letting it go. I would not sit and let it pass me by. And I probably did earlier in my career, but not at that time. With age comes wisdom.
Certainly. Another question I received, Mary, is what do you think is so distinctive about the culture now at SAP? What makes it special for you as an employee?
I don't know that it has anything to do with gender diversity.
Sure. But I mean, in terms of inclusion and belonging, right?
So, well, I mean, I think the first thing is innovation, right? I'm in, and I have been in an innovative space. It's an innovative company. It's constantly changing and growing. It doesn't sit still. And I think that's true both in the way that we run business and in the way that we are tackling the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you look at how that topic started back in 2007, I mean, you had to have a grassroots team to bring it to light. And that looks like that almost everywhere. It wasn't just SAP where that was happening. But how the company has taken that and progressively grown it and grown it and grown it. I mean, I think it was 2 weeks ago, okay, let's call it this year. They just launched an employee network group for caregivers, right? I think that's pretty cool. Who thinks of that group, but we are. There are so many of us are caregivers in so many different ways. And I think it's exciting to see the different dimensions that it's taking and how employees are empowered to take it and run with it. And it's a very open environment that way. Exciting.
Thanks for your response. Like we said, feel free to add. Some people are sending comments to me directly. That's great. You can also add them for everyone, whatever you're comfortable with. We're happy to hear from you. Mary, as you look back, and then maybe we'll move on with the presentation, what do you think would be one piece of advice you would give to your younger self, having learned all the things that you've learned and experienced?
I'm actually going to give that advice in the next part of my presentation.
I didn't even know that. That's fantastic.
Which is use your voice. Use your voice. Don't be afraid to use your voice. When something doesn't feel right, look right, smell right, it's not right. And the only way it's going to change is if you use your voice. And with that, look, I shared with you where my story started. And my question, and this is maybe to the students, is where does your story start? Where do you begin your story, and with what perspective looking backwards and perspective looking forward will you start your story, and where will you take your story? What are you passionate about, and what action will you take to be the catalyst for change? Now that's a big question, but it doesn't have to be a big answer. So what I want to share is just a few ideas based on different folks in the Drexel community in terms of how that can work. And I have to admit, I can't see if you can see my slide and what it says on the top of the slide,
It says students.
Okay, cool. You can see it. Excellent. So for students, super simple. Whether you're an undergrad who is working on your senior project or you're a graduate student working on your capstone project, it's really easy to create a team. We call it like hires like in the workplace, there's a thing like hires like, and it's one of the reasons breaking the gender bias is so difficult in the workplace. It's going to be very easy for you to create a team where you're hiring someone like you. And I don't even mean just from a gender perspective. There's lots of different aspects of diversity, and I would encourage you to make sure that when you have your group and you're creating the group, that you create that group with a diverse set of folks, and don't go for the easy out where you hire people like you to be in your group. It will be one of the first times where you'll really have the opportunity to see the payoff of having a gender and other types of diversity in your group. You will end up with a better project outcome if you have a diverse team than if you try to do it with everyone who's just like you. And the reality is, in the workplace, you're going to be pushed to have diverse groups to work in, and it's a great opportunity to get a little bit of world reality in the classroom environment. If you are a co-op, as I was saying earlier, use your voice. It can be really tempting to just, like, if you're in a meeting, sit in the corner, stay quiet, don't say a word, just listen, don't have an opinion, and move on. And maybe you're soaking it all in. But your point of view is so important. In the workplace, there's something called reverse mentoring, where the younger generation has to school and teach some of us who have been in the workforce for a long time. And only because, when you're working, you sometimes don't even see things. You don't even notice them anymore. They're just ingrained in who you are, and you can't even see them. But times change, and it's the students and the up and coming workforce that's going to see what needs to be changed. And we need your voice to bring it to light and just to express, hey, this is what I'm noticing. It's not done this way anymore, or it doesn't feel right. And use your voice to bring that to light, so that the business can then take that forward and make change in the business. And if you're about to graduate and you're seeking a new job, it's really important to pick an employer who is consistent with your value system, and to know what your value system is, and to start asking questions to ensure that the company is in alignment with your value system. And I'll give you an example. So let's say you could ask an employer, so, what are the practices that you have in place to ensure pay equity in your company? That's a fair question to ask, right? And if you asked someone from SAP, they should be answering things like, well, we have a program called Activating Men for Parity. We have pay transparency, so every employee knows for their role what the pay range is for that role. And then we do audits periodically to make sure that when folks are in a role, that everybody in that role is actually being paid equally. And when they are not, we take the lowest ones and bring them up. And sometimes we're bringing women up, and sometimes we're bringing men up. You should expect to get answers like that around, and make sure that the companies that you're interviewing live up to the standards that you expect them to live up to. And if you are an early talent, okay, so we're in the College of Computing and Informatics, and so I'm going to talk to those students for a minute. And this is your chance, it's a chance for everybody, to put in the chat the word yes if you saw the, let me see if I can get this right, the Google Pixel 6 ad in the Super Bowl featuring Lizzo. Do you remember the Google, and it's an ad that talks about the gorgeous photographs they're now able to take, where they are able, where the photographs actually accurately represent the diversity of colors that human beings are made with. And it's a beautiful video. It's a beautiful ad. So I'm wondering, Marie, do we have people that saw it? Do we have any yeses?
Yes, and you just jogged my memory and I just saw the ad again. Yeah, a bunch of people.
So that ad is built on the back of multiple fails. In 2009, HP got crushed in the press because their webcam was incapable of tracking. It wasn't able to track faces of people that had a darker skin tone, especially when the lighting in front of them was not bright. They got crushed. So from a business perspective, it was a disaster for HP. Same year, the Nikon, I don't even know what it was, Nikon Coolpix, they had this feature that if you blinked, it would say, "Did you blink?" Except there was a woman who was Asian, and when she would have pictures taken of herself, the thing would say, "Are you blinking?" because it didn't recognize that the shape of her eyes were different from what the technology had been tested with. And then in 2015, Google, I can't even bring myself to say the fail that they had. It's terrible. And you can Google it on your own, but they had also a major photo fail. That ad that they aired on the Super Bowl, it took 13 years for companies to get that right. 13 years. It shouldn't take that long. It should not take that long. And it's the students that are coming out of school and entering the workforce now who are architecting solutions, designing solutions, testing solutions. My battle cry is make sure you keep humanity in play and in front of you when you are architecting, designing, testing, that you have diverse user groups, that you interview a whole swath of users and really put the human being at the center of everything that you're doing. On the one hand, for the sake of business, because nobody wants to have the type of press that HP, Nikon, and Google had, but also humanity deserves better. And it's our responsibility. We hold that in our hands, and it's our responsibility to make sure we get it right. So that's my ask, my big ask of students. Alum. I don't know if there's alum on the call, but if there are, I know because they were co-ops at one point, right? It's really important to have a diverse candidate pool. And if you're having trouble getting a diverse candidate pool, I would challenge you that there's something systemically wrong in how you're doing your recruiting. Because in this day and age, the diversity is out there, you have to find it. And then when it's time to interview, just make sure that your interviewing team is also diverse. Because if you're recruiting a diverse set of folks, they're going to want to see people like them in the company and in that interviewing team. And I know that you're serving as mentors and coaches and sponsors and helping to lift people up. If you are a professor, if you are faculty, I think that example of Google is a really great one to demonstrate why it's so important to teach the importance of diversity for technology and business success. And it's important to teach how to architect solutions that solve problems for diverse user groups. So making sure that that's embedded in the curriculum is super important so that our students come out knowing how to create things for the diversity of humanity. And lastly, for the administration, I recently had the opportunity to listen to Dean Deng talk about achieving his first round of 5-year goals and pressing forward. He's also playing the long game of change. It is not easy to shift. It's not easy to shift a business, and it is not easy to shift a university environment as well. So, I applaud Dean Deng for the work that he's doing. I know it's top of mind for him, but also making sure, not just in the College of Computing and Informatics, but also across the Drexel community, making sure that men are activated for parity, making sure that the student and faculty recruitment processes are diverse, and also challenging the status quo of the processes and procedures, and making sure that there aren't any kind of systemic biases built into them. And then, like I said earlier, like creating the transparency on progress so that we can celebrate the wins. It's so easy to look at the negative thing of how slow it's going, but you've got to celebrate the wins in order to press forward with change. And with that, we all, like I said earlier, ambition can't wait. So I invite you to turn whatever perspective you have in your life into and whatever passion you have in your life into action, and to take that and be the catalyst for your own change, for what you want to see, whether it's in your own family, in business, or in the world at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks so much for sharing your history, your experience at SAP, invaluable insights that you have with all of us. I've actually gotten a couple questions, if you're up for it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sure.
one of them, I think, this hits on a great point. Can you speak about the value of having an advocate different from a mentor, and how can you develop that relationship?
Yeah. So maybe I'm going to broaden the question and talk about mentor, coach, sponsor, and maybe by advocate they mean sponsor. I'm going to use them interchangeably.
Okay.
So a mentor is like, how can I say that? Let's see. I'll try to take it from the perspective of a student. I have 3 job opportunities. One of them is in this industry, one of them is in this industry, and one of them is this industry. And I can't decide which one to take. Mary, you're my mentor. What do you think? Here's what's in job number 1, and here's what's in job number 2. You know me. What do you think? What do you think I should do? What would you do if you were in my shoes? And as a mentor, and let's say I know the person, I might say, well, you've told me that, so I think, like, as you think about this thing, you might want to consider this, might want to consider that, And it's all about like what's in my head, what brain dump can I do on the person to help them in making their decision. I wouldn't tell them what to do, but I'm giving ideas, and I'm sharing wisdom, right? A coach is more like, okay, same scenario. I have 3 choices. As a coach, doesn't matter. Anybody can be your coach as long as they know how to coach. They don't need to know you. What they're instead going to do is ask you questions. So they might say, well, forget these 3 job opportunities. What's important to you? What do you want? What do you want out of the job? And you might answer that question, and they might say, well, why is that important to you? And maybe the next question is, well, how does job 1 fill that? And how does job 2 fill that? And how does job 3 fill that? Have you thought about the pros and cons based on your value system? What does that look like? So a coach will ask you question after question after question to support you in making the decisions and taking the action that you need to take in your life. And then you have either an advocate or a sponsor. Advocates and sponsors are relationships that are cultivated over time. They don't happen overnight. The person has to be deeply connected with who you are and truly believe in who you are, and you have some sort of ongoing relationship with that person. Now, in the best case scenario, that just happens organically, right? You worked with the person for a long time, they saw the value that they added, and at some point you're in a development conversation with them, and you actually say to them, hey, it's time for me to learn and grow. You've always been so supportive of me. I'm thinking about taking such and such a job. Can you advocate for me? Right? And the person will say, yeah, sure. And they'll go talk to whoever and kind of open the door for you. Call it an advocate, call it a sponsor. It doesn't matter to me what you call it. I think to me, those two words are interchangeable, but that person, if they're really doing the role of sponsorship, is going to be sitting in a meeting one day and hears about an opportunity, and in the meeting says, oh, I've got the best person for you. Marie, she's fantastic. She's good at this, and she's good at this, and she's good at this. And how about I connect the two of you, because I think you'd really enjoy getting to know her, and I think she'd be a perfect fit for that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, certainly. I think generationally, people have had different experiences with mentoring and understanding, right? Like just as you said, mentor, coach, advocate, sponsor. I think there's a lot more opportunities now. There's a lot more education around those roles. Another question, Mary, I got, it's not specifically about bias, but it is about business. Do you have, and it also obviously relates to women and men, do you have any insights throughout your career about negotiation? Any key takeaways that you could share with this group?
Yes, two. One is go get training on it. Learn it. It's a skill. It's a learnable skill. I am not necessarily the greatest of negotiators, but I didn't learn it until far too late in life. But shoot, there's TED Talks on it. There's free training on it. Go take it, do it, learn it. I had to sell a property last year, and it's easy when you're in a negotiation to start lowering your bar because you're so afraid the opportunity is going to go away. And a friend of mine gave me a great piece of advice, which was, no. You draw your line before you ever enter the conversation, and you do not drop below that line, full stop. So if it starts dropping below the line, discussion over. And that means you're willing to pay the consequence of whatever that means, right? So you really have to be clear on your value system, your worth, and where your in this case, where your bottom line is. In other cases, it might be a top line. It depends on what you're negotiating, but in selling my house, it was like, what's the least amount of money I was willing to take for it? And I didn't budge. So I had to say no, because I was negotiating.
Right. And it's knowing your worth, or the worth of what you're selling. Yeah, certainly. Another question I got, and this is a big one, but you can answer however you want. What's next for you?
Such a good question.
Wasn't my idea.
No, that's okay. Part of that is I don't know. I actually had somebody say to me, and this goes like bias in a different direction, right? It's like age bias as opposed to gender bias. I had somebody say to me, well, Mary, you're at the back end of your career. I mean, what, I guess you don't want like any new challenges or anything. I was like, what are you saying? My mother is 86 years old and still works 3 days a week. My aunt worked until she was 91. Are you insane? I'm hardly halfway. And with that perspective, there's so much ahead. There's so much ahead. Right now, I've invested a lot in the last few years in coaching. And one of the next things that I'm trying to do is to get formally certified in coaching. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. But I do serve as a coach at SAP, and that's been something that's really exciting. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Great prospects. Another question, Mary, was about, obviously things seem to be improving with the pandemic. All our fingers are crossed. They certainly are at Drexel. But did you have any key takeaways for yourself, either personally or professionally, that were outcomes of some of what we went through collectively?
Probably, yes. I'm personally a social beast. I'm an introvert, and I'm extremely social. And the first 3 months of the pandemic for me were just mind numbing and terrible because I live on my own. And I ended up creating a bubble. And then I created the mindset of pandemic. What pandemic? It doesn't mean I was walking around kissing and hugging people and without a mask and without, and breaking rules and stuff. No, but I had to shift my mindset and not make it the topic of discussion in every conversation that I had, and in every hour of every day. I kind of set it to the side and said that, yeah, it's over there. It exists. I'm not denying it exists, but I'm going to move forward with life. And I just did everything outside, and I worked like I worked anyway 3 days a week from home. So the transition to full-time work at home wasn't that big a leap for me. But I recognize also that it hits everybody differently. And I had to get really in touch with my empathy for others, because I had such an easy switch. After the first 3 months, just working from home wasn't a big deal. My sister was a school teacher, a special ed school teacher. Can you imagine trying to do that on Zoom? That's pretty insane. So my other sister is works in daycare and was on the front lines every day and got COVID and spread it in the family. And, that was scary for everyone. And so, yeah, I think for me, it really tapped into my empathy for others.
Certainly, right? Everyone's lived experience is different, even though we have that common bond.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about any final thoughts from you, Mary, about, the significance of Women's History Month, or like we talked about International Women's Day?
Yeah. It's a long game. We're in the middle of it. It's not done. There's more work to be done. And a couple of years ago, I posted it. I think I posted it on Twitter, probably also on LinkedIn, that I really look forward to the day where there doesn't have to be a Women's History Month, and there doesn't have to be a Women's History Day, International Women's Day. I even wonder, when you think about the topic of gender, how will International Women's Day also evolve over time? If parity is a human topic, how is that all going to evolve? I think there's more evolution to come in the future, and I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to be part of it. And I hope that everyone on this call does their own little part.
Yes, most definitely. The college even, we put together a video, right, with just different perspectives and shared it with the community. So even that small effort has a big impact. Yeah. Well, we can't thank you enough, Mary. You're such a contributor to CCI and Drexel as a whole. We're thrilled to have you share your expertise with us, and we look forward to doing it again. So thank
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me here. It truly has been an honor. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending. We hope to see you soon. Bye. Have a